And today we're kind of diving into the more intense, definitely in your face SFX, so I'm really pumped for it. A lot of you know I am a massive Batman fan, and I love the entire Gotham universe in general, especially a lot of the villains and side characters, because some of their stories are very, very interesting, and I have wanted to do a Two-Face makeup for a very long time. Today we are going to finally bring one to life, and for this one I am going to be using a prosthetic that is from Frights. So it is this guy. I will have a link for everything I use in the description. If you have any further questions about any of the steps that I go through today or any of the products I'm using, please feel free to leave them in the comments and I will get back to you. And if you want to see how to bring this Two-Face makeup to life, then just keep watching. Big thing to note when you are buying a foam latex prosthetic like this, you are going to want to have latex to blend it as well as an adhesive to apply it. You also want to be aware that it's probably not going to be perfectly fitted to your face since it's made on kind of a generic model, and obviously everyone's face shapes are completely different. And if you ever need to, you can always cut pieces apart too if it's, you know, ridiculously out of proportion to your face structure. So if you've never worked with foam latex before, it is a really, really lightweight type of latex. It's something that you mix and almost becomes a souffle or whipped cream type texture, and then you actually bake it. And then you are left with a very, very lightweight prosthetic. So you can go for very large, more adventurous prosthetics without having any extra weight. So just on first glance, we're gonna see how this will be fitting. They will come with the mouth. Sometimes the eye pieces will be in. If there's like a nostril section, that'll be in there, but you just have to remove them. That way it allows you to, you know, breathe, actually talk, and be able to see. But they just get left in to kind of hold the piece together in transit, so those are things to just remove. Things to note, I did mention this in the last video, but I'm going to do so again here, just really quickly. If you're working with SFX products and you haven't worked with them before, especially on your skin, please do patch tests. I know they're tedious, I know they're an extra step. Usually you want to give 24 hours for a product to sit on your skin to see if you react to it, but very, very important when working with SFX products. They are far more chemically based. They are more intensive products, so if you have skin sensitivities, you might break out from certain things. You might just find that you have a reaction to something. You want to make sure you find out on a small scale, such as the inside of your elbow or wrist, then before putting it all over your face and finding that you have a negative or even worse, allergic reaction to something. What I am going to do for this one, because it is reaching my hairline, I'm actually going to do quite a few coats of an Elmer's glue stick. This might seem a little silly, but it's actually going to block it down in the same way we would do our brows. I'm also going to do this brow and across the hairline, mainly because latex adheres quite strongly to hair and will probably rip it out when you're removing it. So you want to make sure to do a full thick coating across your brow and any hair that the latex might be touching. That way you don't risk pulling out any hairs when you take it off later. And then apply it in a much thicker amount to both your eyebrow and your hairline. And you can do this especially because a prosthetic is going over top. You don't really have to worry about making it super smooth as if you're trying to erase your brow. You're more just trying to protect it. So you can kind of do a nice thick coating. Same with along the hairline. It is just a washable glue stick. It'll come off in the shower with water, so no worries about like damaging your hair that way. So then admittedly, doing this all on a black background makes this quite difficult, but that's just, there's no going back now. So you can see that I kind of flattened this entire side and letting this side stay kind of poofed up. For areas like this, it's actually really useful if you can to just tear the extra pieces off. And the reason you want to do this is because something that's all ragged edged like this, it's actually a lot better for blending because the human eye is not going to pick that out as much. If it's all kind of ragged, and it can get blended in easier on the sides, and then you won't really pick out exactly where the edges are. Whereas if you went around with scissors and made a perfectly smooth edge, you're almost always going to know where it is because your eye is going to naturally pick out this very unnatural line that exists on your face. So anytime you can keep this nice ragged edge that's all along here, it's going to do you a lot better for trying to blend it. A really good tip to kind of figure out exactly where you're going to be putting glue is to take the prosthetic, and then we're going to take a little bit of translucent powder and go all the way around. And then you can see, much as you make a mess, it gives you a really good idea of where the edges kind of sit. And that way you're not going to end up painting too far past or not far enough. A lot of skin adhesives like Pros-Aide are kind of a two-part, and that means that you want to apply it both to the prosthetic and to your face. And then, for instance, with Pros-Aide, it's white and it goes clear when it's ready to be at its best tackiness, and it will stick to itself the best, which is why you want it both the prosthetic and your face, so that way it completely adheres and not going to shift on you. So you want to go all the way around the edges so that it's not going to roll on itself or get stuck. I'm going to put a little bit around here because the prosthetic does sit this little concave area by the nose. Again, it's not a crazy amount. And that's honestly all I would apply on the face. And I'm basically going to do the exact same on the prosthetic. Go all the way around the edges. And a good tip, as we're letting it dry, a good tip to know is when you're trying to put on a prosthetic that's a lot bigger, especially if it's a full face, it helps to start right at kind of the bridge. It's a really good point of where a prosthetic sits comfortably for you, and then you usually can kind of push it outwards and down from there. So it's good to kind of start in the center and work your way out. The full edges aren't completely flattened, and that's just because I didn't carry it all the way to the edge, because if you put the adhesive on the very edge, you just risk that you might, while fumbling with it, fold the edges in on themselves because they're so thin, and then you're never going to get them apart again. So it's kind of easier at this point to now go back with the Pros-Aide, go all the way around the edges, this part as well, flatten it down, and then we can move on to the next step. From here, there are two really good ways you can go about blending a foam latex prosthetic. One is to use Pros-Aide cream, similar to how I did in the Phantom tutorial, or you can go ahead and use different layers of liquid latex. I'm going to kind of do a little bit of both. The one nice thing about Pros-Aide cream is that because it is based off Pros-Aide, the adhesive, it has a tackiness level to it. So any edges that are being a little bit difficult, it will kind of help sit them down a little bit better. But then I'm also going to go over with latex to show you how you can do that as well and create these thin layers that fade out. That way, if you don't have access to something like Pros-Aide cream, you can always go ahead and use latex as well. For the latex, it's going to be very similar. I'm just going to go around the edges very softly. And latex, you want to work in thin layers. Latex, if you kind of put a glob on, it will not dry very well because the outside dries first. So the inside stays like an encapsulated wet mess that will take significantly longer to dry. So it's much better with latex to work in thin layers and just build up. And when you're blending with latex, you definitely have to do more than one layer, depending on how perfect you want that blend to be. But just kind of go for any areas where you think need a little bit of extra help. And you can always feel along the edging of latex to feel if there's any ridges there. And you can kind of keep building like that. So I'm just going to use some of the Mehron liquid latex. This is the clear one. You also can get it in different colors if you want to get it closer to your skin tone. I've actually only done about 3 or 4 layers, which is less than I normally would, but the edges on this prosthetic are really nice. The thinner the edges on a prosthetic, the easier you're going to find it to blend. And one last good point for why you also want to powder latex is latex sticks really well to itself. So for instance, down here, if we didn't set it, then if I bend my neck a certain way, I actually would end up kind of getting stuck. Obviously, you can pull it apart. Latex isn't that strong. You're not going to get stuck with a kink neck, but you could end up damaging the prosthetic or damaging your paint job, so always good to powder everything first. We have been applying for a long time, so we finally get to paint. We're going to be revisiting the Zombie palette. This was used in the Phantom makeup, and originally when I did it, I was using all of the blue and cool tone colors, but there is also a whole section of different bloods and reds, and I hate trying to get this thing open. There we go, okay. There's all of these guys on the side. Blood tone, age blood, bruise tone, so those are some good ones. There's also some veining if you want to. I don't know that I'm going to touch into that, but there is that. And there's also black for definition. So we're going to jump into it. It's an alcohol-activated palette, so you need alcohol to get the paints to start working. You can also paint foam latex with grease paints is a good idea, or cream paints. Things like water-activated paints aren't ideal because they do dry, so they might crack on you. So I would avoid that if you can. So I'm going to start with blood tone, which is the brightest red in the palette, and kind of start applying that everywhere, mainly to the high points too, because these are the areas where I'm going to try and keep that really vibrant red. And then all the recessed areas, we're going to start making darker and darker. So you can see the first layer, super messy, I totally admit. But I kind of just wanted to get a wash down of the lightest red, and then we can start going in and actually defining all these recessed areas to start making it look more dimensional. Some pretty small brushes, since that's a little bit easier, and such as these guys, which if you're ever looking for really fine detail brushes, highly recommend looking for nail art brushes online. It's a good way to go. And then when you start getting to this point, again, any of the super recessed areas, you can use a little bit of black to really deepen them. But then you might find you want to bring a few things forward. So a nice thing to do there is take the rice paper color over here and just kind of go over any sections that maybe got a little bit lost in all of the shadings. So such as right here, and then we'll kind of just go in different areas and see if we can just make some other stuff pop a little more. And the nice thing about this is that you're essentially just following the high points of the prosthetic. So the prosthetic itself is really doing all of the work. You're kind of just going over the already raised areas. For the eye area, I'm going to be taking a cream product. Hopefully you are happy with the paint and blend and everything. So I always say I carried some extra down my neck. You could do a whole like perfect half. I just kind of wanted to follow the prosthetic that goes kind of diagonally. And then I think for the other side, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep it really simple. Just maybe do some liner, soft shadow, because I want this to be the whole focus anyways. I don't really want much going on over here. Speed run of the normal side done. One last step I'm going to do is add in a bit of what's called like fake tears, fake sweat to add a bit of shine to anywhere that you want it, whether you want to look really greasy or you just want to make something like this look extra shiny and gross. I feel like this makeup could also work for Freddy Krueger or Deadpool, really any of them. So just to show a bit of a close-up of all the shading with the shadows added in and the fun gel sweat effect. And then if you essentially fluff up your side of your head and throw on a totally not pinned together in the back pair of shirts, then you might find yourself with a pretty decent looking Two-Faced outfit. But yes, this is the second collaboration with Camera Ready Cosmetics. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. Obviously a little bit more of a fully realized intensive SFX look. Thank you guys so much for watching. I of course will see you next video, so until then, bye guys!